Welcome to Draw Process, where I draw pages of my comic and process about my development. I'm Ike, page 85 of episode 2 of First Sun and Sword today. We have a moment here that is reminiscent of something from volume 1, what I call episode 1, where Sun had his hand cut. And if you recall, Sword had cut his hand so they could test his blood, and he was whining about it. He was looking away. He was resisting. This time he's cutting his own hand, which is a nice show of development for this character. It's and it's visual. It gives you that image that represents that, which is nice because episode 1 and 2 here, these two volumes, they form a single volume. They really go together as the launching of the story. By the end of this, you're going to see the Emperor, the big villain that we haven't even seen yet. The nice capstone, a nice encapsulation of the whole story within these two episodes. And now we have the blood. Maybe it was mixed with something, but the blood is applied to his wound, and he's drinking it. And I'm referencing the background I drew on the prior page or two pages ago, to see like the size and dimensions of the room and the things in the room. And these are my thumbnails, as you may know if you've seen this series. This is the rough. So I'm definitely trying to capture what my mind sees. What's the main thing? It's the bowl, it's the knife, it's his hand getting cut, it's it being applied to Sword and getting a nice establishing shot on him. It's Sun having cut his hand, and now his hand is wrapped, so I'm giving continuity from the first panel that shows his hands and the cut to this panel. But this is a jump in time. We're moving quite ahead. We don't know how much time has transpired from when they were inside in panel 1 and 2 in the last 2 pages to now when he's sitting outside and Farah has just walked outside. But by showing his hand that's cut, I've created continuity from the first image in the first panel of the cut to this panel, which is now in a new location. So you can create a sense of continuity, movement, transition, change by, it doesn't have to be based on linear time, but you can still find ways to convey it. That's an important thing to learn, which comes naturally for many. For me, it's something I just naturally try to do. But it's something you want to learn how to do. The imagery is very powerful. In some sense, I'm just drawing what my mind sees. I'm just trying to tell the story in sequential order, as if the camera was here and these were actors doing things. But at the same time, the framing I'm choosing of these images can have a lot of power. She's walking up to him here, and it's the nice tall panel, but she appears so much larger than him, towering over him. He's avoiding her eyes. Then she moves, in the second panel. Now she's sitting next to him, but they're not looking at each other. They're just like distant. There's no connection, right? And then we transition, and now we see that, they're looking the same direction. And there's something where they're grouped together more now. They're not incredibly connecting. They're not looking in each other's eyes, but there's more connection happening. And you pick that up through the camera angles. It isn't simply the acting, but it's the angles and the chosen image and what it conveys, what it means, instinctually even. I've been wondering if I want to put a lot more panels in my pages. I'm curious about that. what if I put a lot more panels and smaller drawings even? Sometimes big ones, but sometimes really small ones. The thing about that is it would probably be a lot of floating heads. These small panels would be just an expression, just a hand, just an action, just one person in it. And because I'm pretty cinematic in my visual style, I am using angles and capturing multiple things. Like here, it's not just the hand over the bowl, but there's a little bit more. There's the bed there above. There's his hand holding the knife in the bottom right, and then the woman's hand on the bottom left is his hand, and on the right is the woman's hand. A grouping of things in one panel. Or when I do over the shoulder shots, we have both characters are seen in the panel, but one is a silhouette, is a large negative space. But if I did really small panels, I might not do that, or we would lose a lot of detail. Which maybe I could do it, but just lose the detail. I'm curious about that, because and so much of this, draw process, it's about curiosity. Can you be curious about your process and what you're doing? For example, there's a particular scale at which I draw my panels. There is a mean, there is a tendency, a pattern to what I instinctively do or even intentionally do. But there's a pattern to the camera angles I'm using, or the size of my figures, the amount of detail, the variety from small to large panels. All kinds of things like that. There's there begins to be this averaging, this pattern, this style that emerges, and if I become aware of it, then I get to develop myself. I get to change myself, and not simply be, continuing to unwind, the same way. If you're having problems in life and you're unwinding yourself the same way all the time, that's why you might go to therapy and get some awareness about how you're doing it. Same thing here. And when I look at other comic books, I look at, what are those averages? What are their kind of ranges and where things are grouped? It would be like, kind of getting a feel for a person, their personality. They're not just acting and reacting in a completely random sequence. There's a grouping. There's what tends to be their response, and so on. And those tendencies are like what makes up the personality, like what is unique there. And so thinking of it that way, and how can how could I maybe do it differently? Sometimes it's changing the tools you're using, or changing your process from when I was doing thumbnails on separate paper to doing it here. But it could be something much bigger, or more subtle in a way too. Not just changing the tool, which is kind of an obvious thing to do, but what about smaller panels, less detail, more variety and scale? I don't know, all kinds of things. Okay, not a whole lot of perspective I have to work out, but keep in mind that even for me, even when the background is almost non-existent, I am still drawing in perspective. I'm understanding in my drawing where my horizon line is, where the perspective is on things. That brings it to life. I can find, I'm looking at the planes, almost like a horizontal plane. Where would that be? If you just kind of drew a grid and it went towards the vanishing point at any particular height, at any plane, what would be that grid, that plane, and I can make sure that my figures are matching that. Here in this panel, I wanted her to tower over him. If the horizon had been very level and it was a wide angle shot, just kind of static, not much perspective on them, then she would not appear so large compared to him, and the scale difference between them wouldn't be there. But right now in this drawing, her shoulder line is very tilted. Like we're seeing down at the top of her collarbone and shoulder there. And the other shoulder would be very high. So I didn't put a lot of effort into that, but I was aware of it drawing it, that her collarbone is quite vertical. It's like, and because of the plane that it would be on to the vanishing point I've chosen here. And it gets worse, it gets more extreme. It's as it goes down further from the horizon line, her chest line, her hip line or waist line is getting more and more angled, and you'll see I threw in a few lines on the background to give you the feel for where the horizon would be. I mean, if you look at those, you'll see kind of what I was thinking. And then we have the static shot where they're just sitting next to each other. That I wanted it to feel static at that moment. I worked out what they're going to say here, and then I changed it. I decided to edit that. But when I'm drawing their face expressions, I'm really trying to feel what the characters are feeling. I want there to be a lot of life to their personalities, and so when I rewrite, I'm limited by the expressions. I'm like, okay, I've got to make sure that this still feels right. But that's how I like to do it. It's fun to be able to edit, to get a second chance at the dialogue and see if there's something else I like more. It makes it fun at every step of the process instead of some of it being just factory line. And I'm almost done with the pencil phase because I've gone in with the darker pencil to get another more refined layer of pencils in on top of the rough ones. And then I come in with this 08 micron. I'm putting in the panel borders and the word balloons with this before I go back with the dip pen and ink using a G pen nib to do all of the inks. Yeah, and that's a nice view of the whole page. So the gutters, if the gutters are not going to align, as here you can see this vertical gutter is on the third, and then the other one's more on the half. Cutting it in half. So if you go from the first tier, the first row of panels, they're divided more to the left. The next one's divided in the middle. If they're not divided, there's a certain amount of variety you would want. It would kind of be like in design, just wanting a certain amount of scale variety, for it to look good. Like you wouldn't want to use a 14-point font and a 16-point font in the same graphic. Like you make a larger difference between them or make them the same to make it a bigger statement kind of thing. And so I think of that when I place my panel sizes and panel borders. They don't need to be off, just a bit. Make them further off than that. Yeah, and let's see, there in that moment, I remember thinking, well, that's fun. I hatched in the shadow before I put in the final line instead of putting in the edge, the line, and then hatching against it, I put in some of the lines first, the hatching lines first, before I decided on the final line. I noticed that, and I thought, I wonder if that's something I'm gonna do more of. Maybe not, because this is nice to, like, when I draw that table and lamp, I just do it all in one go and I move on. Versus if I was focusing on hatching first, what would that mean? Like, how far would I go before I double back? So I don't know if that'll be fruitful, but again, bringing things into awareness, curiosity, questioning, oh, I noticed something different here. Maybe there's something to learn. Maybe there's a new way to do this. And what else, why would you do it any other way? Like, if you want to remain excited, if you want to continue to enjoy what you do, bring curiosity to it. I know that I found this pose, I realized I wasn't quite happy with it. I hadn't, because I didn't draw her legs, and I didn't define the foreshortening on her arm very well. Her hips are twisted, so her shoulders are kind of aligned, while the hips are more turned towards the camera. So it's an awkward pose in the first place, but I didn't work it out in great detail, so I found it more difficult to render. I remember feeling that way, that the proportions are probably off somewhat there. Yeah, I noticed it. Again, I don't know what I'll do with that, but it's good to notice. I think that's the theme today, is to maintain curiosity. That's where learning and excitement and enjoyment all can be. If you're getting bored with your work, burnt out, you're probably not bringing much curiosity to it. Of course, if your job, if you can't help but feel it's an assembly line, and that it, in order to complete the work, you need to not bring curiosity to it, then, that's a different matter. Maybe it might be difficult to bring curiosity to that. And that would be okay, sure, but when it comes to the kind of developing I want to do, then bring curiosity. I'm thinking of how if I was executing the same drawing or the same process, the same line, as if it's an assembly line, I just have to sit down and for hours I'm doing the same thing again and again and again. You would get better at it. You're just acting out the same code every time, and yeah, you would get more efficient. It would get better. But it's an echo chamber. It's a closed circuit. It's a closed loop. No inputs coming in. You're just continuing to refine that execution. And that's an interesting quality that art has, the mix of the kind of general robotic like execution that's applied, the mix of that with the curiosity and creative choices is something that seems to, that's one way to understand, make sense of the uniqueness of different artists. But I don't want to do too much of the assembly line kind of thing, to just refine and refine. the same thing. I think if I'm going to err, I would rather err on the side of curiosity, and I think that you don't have to like worry about making sure that your process has standardization, that it has systematic, assembly line qualities. Like, there's far too much going on when in a complex process like this for you to maintain awareness of it all and do it all with novelty. There's an incredible amount of things I must be doing on automatic to be able to do this. You'll find something novel, and then you'll turn it into something automatic, and then you find new novelty, and then you turn that into the automatic, unless you stagnate, unless you stop learning and being curious. So there's always both, and so I don't think you have to worry about making sure there's enough of the automatic. You're going to have the automatic, just by the nature of the work. I only have one page left of the original plan for this book, but I decided to add a few more pages. I'm not sure how many, because I need to figure out the scene. But I'm going to introduce the capital city, the emperor's, throne room or palace, and the emperor Lord Tsar, the lizard man emperor, who's the big villain. So I want it to be a very rich environment, a well-designed, very telling, interesting world design, and big establishing shots, big images. And maybe I'll do that literally. Maybe I will do really big images. I've been talking about playing with scale. Maybe I could do a double page spread that's just the city, and then go into smaller panels, in the future. But this entire scene will be short and maybe big. So we'll see how I storyboard that, how I decide to execute that. But I know that I want it to be of that quality and well designed. And I still need to do a final design for Lord Tsar. I will probably work that out on separate paper. He's too important of a character to make it up on the page, as I usually do with my characters. So I want to work out some designs, and all of these lizard men are a little different. So King Croc was very much this crocodile alligator, very much stocky like that. And Kurok the man-eater, he's got this Komodo dragon-like snout and jaw, and he's quite thick. He's more Komodo dragon influenced. A pretty muscular, still somewhat stocky, but lean enough to be fast kind of figure. So when it comes to Lord Tsar, I wonder what I will draw from, because he needs to seem the most dangerous. And I haven't decided if he's going to be the most dangerous because he's the most human-like, or if it's because he's more beastly. Does he need to be lean and strong, or is he going to be really big, like almost dragon-like, or is he, more human-like, and that's his strength? He's almost like Sun of First Peoples, except with lizard qualities. So if he has very human structure and appearance, proportions, that might be fascinating, right? That could be an interesting emperor, instead of going with the obvious, the big beastly guy, right? And it would introduce a new component to this too, because Sword, he was just talking about and with the King Croc, and he was commenting in the last episode about how the lizards could never rule men because they don't have fear. They don't have the master and slave morality components. The being able to lead or will, but also obey. And they're just animals, and so they're not really able to lead. And so that would be interesting if he's mistaken. Maybe the reason Lord Tsar is the emperor is because he can lead, and yet he still is non-human and psychopathic. Has no care for human life. So I'm leaning that direction, but I'm not positive yet. And when it comes to some of the lore that I've got in mind for the future, it does make sense that he would be a little more humanoid-like. So that'll be fun to figure out, and then that will wrap up the, like I said, it encapsulates the entire story within these 2 episodes. From there, I get to do anything I want. After this, Sword is basically going to recover, and they get to go on their journeys across the countries, and I get to tell shorter stories probably of them going on these adventures, and eventually it'll weave back in the emperor and everyone else. But a lot of liberty to play in the sandbox that I've set up. Not only like a world, a design of a world and characters, but the narrative structure, the story, and all that is set up enough that I could do an episode that doesn't go anywhere. Even let's say that it's just a self-contained little adventure. It wouldn't feel wrong. Like we know enough of the world to go on that detour and feel like it still matters. I'm excited to get there. Really feeling how it's been 10 years since I started comics. So really feeling that it's like turning a new page into the next decade, and how am I going to tackle that? What kind of work do I want to produce? What kind of books do I want to create? Stories do I want to tell? And then that's the new vista, the new journey, and then there I will go. Here are the colors; they're almost the same. There's a slight shift as it's more of a night time, a very slight shift to the shadow and colors. So that it's consistent with the book, easy to do, but feels a little different than earlier in the daytime. And that's it. I hope you got something out of this. Hopefully you can bring some curiosity to your own process and share that with other people. See you next week.